Russell, did you follow this controversy discussion this week about AOC at the Met Gala in her Tax the Rich dress? Did you follow that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was curious your thoughts about it because the whole conversation is about, AOC, obviously, she proclaims herself to believe in a sort of class politics, aligns herself with the working class, is of the working class herself. And the critique here was there you are, hobnobbing with the rich and the famous and giving a performative display with this dress. And do you even really mean it? But I wonder, as someone who also has sort of like access and invitation to those elite spaces, how you thought about it and how you think about how you navigate being essentially a traitor both to your cultural and economic class.
Think about it a lot. Part of my spiritual program is to try not to be judgmental of other people's actions because I am so flawed and fallible myself, and I'm sure I've done 1,000 hypocritical things before breakfast. Personally, I wouldn't attend events like that anymore, possibly because it makes me feel kind of nervous. But I'm sure AOC is a highly intelligent person and a intuitively shrewd political operator for whom I have respect, has her reasons. And for me, my spirituality and my philosophy is for me. I'm talking about it now, but I hope I'm not hectoring. I've not said that you, Kyle, or you, Krystal, you do whatever you want. You know more than I do about millions of things. All I know is how to sort of roughly navigate being me without ending my own life or having to take crack and heroin every day to sort of ameliorate the terrible pain of the empty hollowness of the cultures we're invited to inhabit. And I'm sure, like me, AOC has her reasons for doing what she's doing, and that she, I don't feel like judging nobody. I feel like, as a person that grew up in an ordinary home, single parent family, blue collar world, that I miss where I'm from. And having lived recently through Brexit and Trump, I've seen a lot of hurtful rhetoric thrown around about ordinary working people, a lot of judgment. I feel on a personal level, and I know this is common because I know other people in my position ain't that unique, that feel the same thing, a kind of guilt, sometimes even shame about not being poor anymore. It's not glorified in this country in the same way that it is in yours. I do feel that it is somewhat unfair, but, I've got children, that's it. So you find yourself in that tension. I'm not yet bold enough to say, right, okay, we're giving everything away and we are going to live humbly. We are going to feel the spiritual succor of knowing we're doing the right thing. I don't know what's going to happen to me yet as a result of those kind of feelings. I really don't. Personally, I think, as I said to you before, that it is all of our individual duty to become the embodiment of our beliefs rather than the kind of vocal transmitter of our beliefs. If people see, some of the people that I most admire, like say from a spiritual perspective, someone like Amma, she lives that. That's her life. Her life is she goes around trying to raise money to do good things, cuddling people. As far as I can see, she has no personal life, no other cares other than, there's been a flood, we need to build houses, we need to support schools, women in this area or girls can't get educated, let's make sure they get educated. She just is living in a constant flow of devotion. But that, she's a sublime being, as far as I can understand, someone that's been liberated from egotism, and perhaps the only route to that is through spiritual practices, which is why I return to it again and again. And maybe not all of us need to be avatars, but all of us need to have values and principles and live to some degree in accordance with them. And I don't think any of us should be rushing to ally ourselves with an existing political ideology, because I think by their fruits shall we know them. Now, I'm not saying let's discard all of history. It's nothing but a waste bin. There's so many beautiful cultural and ideological artifacts everywhere, every nation in the world, so many beautiful cultural things. For me, though, I'm interested in moving forward. I'm interested in the reality of our challenges from ecological, economic, and social perspective, how might we address them? And to me, what seems most reasonable, particularly in the space that is so defined by oppositionism, for people to be able to live within communities where they are able to set up their own value systems and not feel like, oh, well, I don't agree with this anymore. I don't want to live like this. I feel like that what's the point in having some centralized body telling people how they have to be, what they can do, what they can't do, unless it's absolutely necessary. Someone's going to have to decide on some universals. There's going to have to be some consensus on don't murder people, don't harm others. I shouldn't imagine we'll struggle too much to achieve some basic universal principles by which a confederacy of fully autonomous communities could live with economic interaction when necessary, with the priority being some degree of responsibility and preservation, the respecting the rights of the individual, but prioritizing as much as we can the rights of the community, not because of some ethical reason, but because people feel better. We feel better when we do the right thing. I also recognize my own limitations, that there are some things I'm good at, there are other things that I ain't good at. And, you know, I welcome collaboration partly because of how limited I know myself to be.
Yeah. You know, it seems like, and I don't want to mischaracterize your comments, but it seems like at times you kind of give yourself a hard time about not choosing to give it all away or bring in the immigrants or lead a sort of humbler, more anonymous life. The flip side argument would be, here you are, people know who you are, you have this huge platform, and you can use that platform as you are to try to change people's minds and affect some kind of change. Whereas if you, as one individual, you know, just giving away your wealth is going to be a drop in the bucket of the pain and the suffering and isn't ultimately going to change any of these systems. So how do you think about those things? Do you think that's a good argument, or do you think that the way you live in and of itself is sort of an end in and of itself, regardless of it, if it has a tremendous impact on the society?
Krystal, I like the one where I get to live in comfort, where I get to have comfy clothes and a comfy life. And also, remember, my ideology is not some terrible, drab, ascetic, why don't we live in penury and misery? It's like, let's not live distracted continually by consumerism and stimulating mindless pleasure, some kind of middle way, as the Buddha called it. So, yeah, I mean, like, what I feel like is that, I want to give myself a bit of a break because I'm progressing, albeit slowly, and I hope that I will improve more. And I recognize that in my position, I can participate in conversations, but what is required at this time is more than conversation. It is action. So I'm looking at opportunities to create community, adjacent nations where people can set up their own systems, where there is necessarily some kind of defiance. You can't change the world without standing up to unnecessary authoritarianism, without forming your own communities, without freely communicating your own values. But I recognize for me, the personal journey is fundamental, that I have to personally become free of the chains that bind me, my own vanities and requirements. But I also recognize too that me being willing to continually openly acknowledge my challenges and my struggles hopefully means that the entry price for the party that changes the world is not perfection. It's okay to be flawed. That's part of who we are. It's okay to have made and to make mistakes. That's part of our journey. Restitution and redemption are beautiful things. Again, like it says, and I notice I'm quoting the Bible a lot. I don't know quite what's happening here, but like in Isaiah, when it said, fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by your name. You are mine. I saw that once I was in a prison. I was doing something very lefty and helpful. I was reading poems to prisoners, because if you're in a prison, what you really need deep down is a poem from a celebrity.
Fix
that
everything.
Really helps you to deal with, thank God for that. I was hoping possibly for better conditions and some opportunities when I leave prison. And in fact, a society that doesn't generate a class of prisoners just to prop up private prison industries. But if I can't have that, I'll take a poem. So as I was thinking, like musing on those hypocrisies and feeling a bit nervous in the chapel at Brixton Prison in London, I see that thing, fear not, because for I have redeemed you. I've called you by your name, you are mine. And I was feeling fearful. So I thought, this is good that it's telling me not to be afraid. Fear not, for I've redeemed you. And redeem, we mostly think of it as forgiveness. Fear not, for I've forgiven you. I've called you by your name, you are mine. But the fact that it says, I've called you by your name, you are mine, suggested to me that it's the other usage of the term redemption, like you redeem your ticket at the end of your night at a nightclub to reclaim your coat. Fear not, because I have redeemed you, I've called you by your name. And it made me feel, the only way to be free from fear is to belong to a higher thing, to belong to God, to be a vessel for a higher purpose, whatever your God is, wherever your God is from, even if it's the atheistic, rationalistic, materialistic God of, I don't know, community, kindness, love. I don't know where it comes from without an acknowledgement of the undoubted, unknowable magnitude that must make up the vast majority of all phenomena, given that so little is known. But I felt that if you belong to a higher purpose, if you belong to a higher thing, then freedom from fear is a possibility. And that's part of what inspires me to continue to change, although reading poems to prisoners doubtless has its place too.
To your point, there's a great Nietzsche quote that I love. One who has a why to live for can endure almost any how. And I think that's profound. So to briefly touch on the AOC thing that you mentioned, Krystal, you have a great saying that you and Sagar have used for breaking points, which is hate each other less and hate the elites more. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the whole point of the show.
Yes.
And so the question, Russell, that I have for you is, I do see this split on the left where there are some people on the left, and I'd probably include myself in this, that not only am I against the financial elite in the sense that these are the people who rig the system and, you know, you've talked about redistribution of wealth. We obviously should tax them and redistribute that wealth in a way that's fair. So not only am I against the financial elite defined as people who've rigged the system for their favor against the average people, but I also do view myself as kind of against the cultural elite as well. But then there's others on the left who are against the financial elite, but not really against the cultural elite. And in some ways, they might even consider the cultural elite allies because, you know, Hollywood, for example, even though it's packed full of hypocrites, there's also, you know, people there generally are supportive of LGBTQ rights, generally are supportive of equality in some senses of the term. So where do you fall on that spectrum between being anti-financial elite and anti-cultural elite, or being anti-financial elite and pro-cultural elite?